Stone Cold Prose. Building better words.
Narcissist. These days, that word is little more than an insult, cut free of its deeper meaning by careless overuse. But for those of us who've had up close and personal experience with the breed narcissist, it means something more, something deeply personal and visceral. So let's get into this, but be warned, this rabbit hole goes deep, all the way to Hollywood. Hi guys, welcome back to Stone Cold Prose, where we build better words, better thoughts, and better men. I'm Miles Watson, novelist and author of numerous award-winning series, including Cage Life, Sinner's Cross, and The Chronicles of Magnus. I worked in Hollywood for 12 years. I worked in law enforcement for another 10, and now I break it all down and build it back better. So let's get into this. Like many people, I thought for most of my life that narcissism simply meant vanity, coupled with the shallowness and the self-centeredness that vanity usually brings. Had I known what narcissists really were, the red flags they wave in the air and the damage they're capable of doing, I'd have spared myself a great deal of suffering and pain, both in my personal life and my Hollywood career. For the record, narcissism is classified as a personality disorder rather than a disease. It is believed to be created by environment. There is no gene for narcissism, and it is not hereditary. Mental health professionals say it is often the result of a particular type of parenting that teaches children to be entitled, to lack empathy, and to crave attention and adulation, and to get what they want, no matter what the consequences to others. I believe this to be true, but I also believe anecdotally, but totally believe, that it can develop in children who are excessively bullied by parents or peers or both. As the social psychologist Vlad Vexler has pointed out many times, narcissists are often people who were so thoroughly shamed as youngsters that they make a decision never to feel shame again, an act which on the surface seems healthy until one realizes the deeper purpose of shame is to guard us against behavior that's foolish or morally wrong. A shameless person is not only without a sense of embarrassment, they lack moral self-awareness, they lack remorse. Hollywood is often described as a playground for narcissists, and it's true. Let me give you an example from my working life. The year was 2011. And I was living in Los Angeles and working in the makeup effects industry as a production coordinator when times were good, and when times were not good, as a runner and what they call, in effects, a shop monkey, meaning the guy who does the work nobody else wants to do. Now, a friend of mine, a friend of a friend actually, hired me to work in the video game industry on the side, and this side gig rapidly became more of my real gig. And it was there, working for a very successful trailer house, that I encountered Mr. JAYNE, who held the august title of director, although his job boiled down to its essence was to pull footage of free or scripted gameplay and then edit it into video game trailers. Mr. JAYNE did not make a favorable impression on me. Indeed, the one really redeeming quality he possessed was that his cards were more or less on the table from the start. He was cold, rude, self-absorbed, arrogant, scheming, manipulative, malignant, treacherous, and as abusive as he could get away with to the rest of us. Now, according to the head shrinkers, the test for classic narcissism is in fact as follows. Sense of self-importance, preoccupation with power, beauty, or success, entitlement, can only be around people who are important or special, interpersonally exploitative for their own gain, arrogant, lack empathy, must be admired, envious of others, or believe that others are envious of them. That could be 10. But of these 9 points of what's called the special me scale, Mr. JAYNE hit on 8. He did not need to be around people who were important or special. Quite the contrary. He actually hated any sign that colleagues or underlings had any personal responsibility or could take personal responsibility or ability. He wanted total obedience. He wanted the crew to do exactly as they were told, to keep silent unless asking or answering a question, to eat when he was hungry, and go home when he himself was tired. Now, I've worked on sets, on locations, in makeup effects studios, and in 7 different trailer houses when I was doing video games, and I never met anyone with less concern for his crew's physical needs. Food, rest, bathroom breaks, comfortable chairs, reasonable temperatures. On a number of occasions, he was actually reprimanded by his boss for suggesting that he be allowed to fire someone at random on the first day of a project, so the rest would be terrorized and fall into line. But the reprimands he received had no effect, and he never stopped making suggestions of this type. Again, lack of shame. Of course, Mr. Jayne's desires and reality did not generally correspond. His coworkers hated him, and they did as much dirt as they could, though in the habit of narcissists, he seemed to be better at kicking dirt than they were. He even went into his colleagues' offices at night to secretly look at their work, which he would then criticize in private emails to the bosses, suggesting those people be fired or demoted so he could get their work and get more money. Now, he wasn't lazy. He probably put in 100 hours a week during the crunch times especially. But he was also in double overtime during the crunch times and was making about $150 an hour. His crew, meanwhile, was an uncontrollable, loud, vulgar, boisterous, undisciplined, semi-anarchic mob who pushed back and sometimes shouted back when he became intolerable. I myself had to be restrained from hitting him at least once, and after some years, I was blacklisted by him as a punishment. That blacklist held until he himself was fired from that trailer house, whereupon I returned to spit on his figurative grave. Working with him for all those years, however, was pretty unendurable. Jayne was a glorified footage puller. He seriously believed himself to be a director on par with Scorsese or Spielberg. He must have known how loathed he was, and there were times I actually pitied him because his suffering in that regard was visible and even sad, but his behavior never changed. He was forever driving us, exploiting us, denying us credit, and treating us as if we were service robots rather than human beings. At one point, he created his own team of these silent, spineless minions to work on his projects. These guys were the absolute pick of the litter box, without personality or fire or even intelligence or even ability. They were only qualified in that they were utterly subservient to him. To his dismay, however, he discovered what many a narcissist before him has discovered, if not necessarily acted upon, that surrounding himself with mediocrity only hindered his insatiable ambitions. He had to weigh his fear of being outshined or pushed back upon by his crew with his need to have people around him who could actually do their damn jobs. It must have cost him some sleepless nights trying to grapple with this self-created problem. I suppose narcissism in its own way is its own form of purgatory. The way out is clear, but they can't or won't take it. Their ego won't allow them. Now, Mr. Jayne, like all bad pennies, turned up at another studio with a long list of demands in one hand and a blacklist in the other. And Hollywood, which rewards behaviors punished almost everywhere else in the Western world, including prison, caved into him. I mercifully never encountered the man again, in large part because I was on his blacklist. But I heard that he brought a level of toxicity to his new employer no one had ever experienced before. As with the previous company we worked at together, he managed to destroy the morale of everyone he worked with without any real consequences to himself. And in fact, whenever his name comes up among old coworkers and friends of mine, words like toxic and toxicity are two which are unfailingly employed. Radioactive waste was my favorite, however, because it's accurate. Working with Jayne was a nuisance and a nightmare. I was spared deeper trauma because it was a purely work situation, and as a freelancer in a very loose and undisciplined environment, gaming, I was able to give him enough shit to visibly hurt or anger him on many occasions and thus keep some vestige of my self-respect. But my victories over him were always fleeting and without any lasting effect. He did not learn lessons from failure. He did not draw conclusions from defeat. He simply kept on keeping on, like Eddie Money said. Even his superiors usually crumpled before him. The sheer tenacity of narcissists, the stamina they have for argument and vendetta, is well beyond that of the ordinary person. Because they lack shame, because they are self-obsessed, because they equate accepting even a minuscule criticism as a reflection on their actual worth as a person rather than their performance, because they see being hated and raged against as a form of attention not much less valuable than being adored or loved, and because they are emotionally retarded and primitive, they can persist in their game of checkers long after you have resigned your game of chess. In a sense, the only way to truly win an argument with a narcissist is to get in the last word and then knock them unconscious, something I often contemplated in Mr. Jayne's presence. It would have been enormously pleasurable to do so, but aside from landing me in jail, it wouldn't have changed anything. Narcissists can maybe help themselves if they're not too far gone down the emotional rabbit hole to do so, but it requires an understanding that they're a defective human being and that they require outside help, and those are two things which most of them will never, ever do. Now, if Mr. Jayne was a fluke, an aberration, an anomaly like Neo in the Matrix, it would hardly be worth discussing him. But when you get right down to it, Hollywood, the entertainment industry, as an aggregate, as a whole, actually shares all the traits of the personality disorder itself. So let's go over them again. Sense of self-importance, check. Preoccupation with power, beauty, or success, check. Entitlement, check. Can only be around people who are important or special, check. Interpersonally exploitative for their own gain, check. Arrogant, check. Lacks empathy, check. Must be admired, check. Envious of others or believe that others are envious of them, check, check. Checkity, check, check. Let's all take a moment to marvel at this, shall we? Whether the industry draws people who are already like this, by its nature, or whether it encourages their creation by rewarding those who exhibit these traits, is just a variation of which came first, the chicken or the egg. In practical effect, it doesn't matter. We have chickens and we have eggs. We have narcissists and we have Hollywood, the playground of narcissists. You'd think that narcissists, by their nature, would hate other narcissists. But nope, not a bit of it. They seem to enjoy each other's company, if only because they share the same value system. And when we understand this, we also understand why they fail upward. The fail upward system, that's Hollywood's hallmark, continues to survive and indeed to thrive in what would otherwise be a very Darwinian, a cruelly Darwinian environment. When I first visited Hollywood back in 1999, long before I moved there, I asked my brother, who was already working in the industry, why there were so many movies that just plain sucked. And I will never forget his reply. When you come to understand the system, what amazes you is not that so much of what gets made is utter shit, it's that anything good gets made at all. Throw in the rise of wokeism, which makes the success or failure of a director, producer, studio suit, or even an entire franchise irrelevant, provided it or they hit the right ideological talking points, and we have a perfect storm, a place where people who have honor and integrity enter a race only to be hobbled by Annie Wilkes before they even get off the starting blocks, a place where virtue is punished and vice is rewarded. So the next time you hear about somebody in the business, the entertainment business, who's just a really good soul like Keanu Reeves or Dolly Parton or Tom Hanks or Gary Sinise, please take a moment to understand what an uphill battle they have to fight every day to maintain any sense of optimism or decency. Dealing with an individual narcissist is hell, but dealing with the entire nest, well, to quote Billy from Predator, I wouldn't wish that on a broke dick dog. Folks, if you enjoyed today's content, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, and remember to check out my books on Amazon. The link is in the description, if I remember to put it there. I drop scripted content every Friday, shorts every day, and unscripted rambles whenever rage moves me to do so. See you next time, and until then, stay cold and stay away from narcissists.